Welcome back to KCEN Kickoff here on 6 Plus, where we kick off your weekend of sports just a little bit early. I'm your host, Ethan Love, and let's just get right into the news of the week. Nico Harrison has been fired as general manager of the Dallas Mavericks. I don't think that there is a Mavs fan in existence that isn't happy with this move. It all goes back to the Luka trade. There were also some other questionable decisions. If you go and look at Nico Harrison's resume, trading Porzingis, letting Brunson walk, but the Luka thing was obviously what did him in. And the fact that the Mavericks were not off to a hot start this season definitely makes all the difference. But I'm very happy as a Mavericks fan because of this. But I don't necessarily agree with the decision. Okay, so you trust your GM, as the new ownership, they trust Nico Harrison, and they let him make this move, which they probably shouldn't have let him make this move, but hey, it's new ownership. They let him make the move. Trading Luka to the Lakers, it disgusts me to even say it, but he trades Luka Doncic to the Lakers. And this was his vision. He wanted to build a defensive-first team because ultimately that's what the Mavericks were lacking when they lost the NBA Finals the year before. So you go all in with Nico. You're like, all right, Nico, we trust you and we trust your vision to make this team the way you want. Then 9 months later, you fire him. So it's a rough start, 3-8 to start the season. The Mavericks have a game tonight. And you fire Nico, and it's just, now what's the direction? What is the direction here? So you buy all in with Nico and his vision to make a defensive team, and 11 games into the season following that trade and getting the number 1 overall pick and drafting Cooper Flagg is to fire him. So now that there's no direction right now. And now the Mavericks have to consider doing a lot. You have to consider trading Anthony Davis. He's played 9 out of 44 possible games. That's not going to work. And that was the whole problem with trading for AD in the first place. We know his injury history. Kyrie Irving is still hurt. They're playing Cooper Flagg at point guard. That's not his normal position. Things are a mess right now in Dallas, and it's one of the saddest things sports-wise. It's one of the saddest just sports sad type of things in a while. Just the way that the Mavs fans have been treated and this past year or so. But I think if you're going to go all in with Nico, you got to at least see it out a little bit more than this. Obviously, it's not working right now, and so... And again, there's not going to be a single Mavs fan that's going to be mad at this information, but I think you have to ride it out just a little bit to see his vision through fully, because the Mavericks have a good roster. They're just a little bit injured right now, but hey, that's what they get for trading for Anthony Davis, right? And playing Kyrie a ton last season once they traded Luka because they didn't have another creator on offense. But that's all I have to say. But Luka, on the other hand, balling. While the Mavericks are 3-8, the Lakers are 8-3, and the Lakers are also decimated by injuries. But Luka is carrying them, so we will always have Luka in our hearts for that one. But let's go ahead and move on to baseball. The season's over, but this Class A drama, I feel like we just have to talk about it because. Well, you know what? Let's just go through the timeline first. The timeline of this Emmanuel Clase Luis Ortiz ordeal. So July 3rd, Clase and Ortiz were placed on the non-disciplinary paid leave. Everyone's like, that's a little strange. So then things start to come out about everything and how they could have been rigging pitches, allegedly. And then August 31st, their leave was extended indefinitely. And now, just this past week, 3 days ago on November 9th, both pitchers were indicted by prosecutors in New York for an illegal scheme to rig bets on pitches in MLB games. Kind of similar to the Terry Rozier situation and the Chauncey Billups situation in the NBA. From 2023 to 2025, they allowed gamblers to earn a reported $450,000 through this illegal gambling ring where they were basically, before the game and before they would come in to pitch, they were on their phones, by the way, during the game, which I think is crazy. But, I mean, I guess you're in the bullpen, whatever. They're texting these people, hey, I'm going to throw this pitch first. I'm going to throw a fastball. So with these all these micro bets is what I'll call them, you could bet on, hey, is the pitch going to be over or under 95 miles an hour? And Clase could text his buddies and be like, hey, I'm going to throw a heater first pitch, bet over on that miles an hour. Or in a more simpler case, is Clase's first pitch going to be a ball or a strike? And he would text them, hey, I'm going to spike this one in the dirt. It's going to be a ball. And his reported earnings from each one of these was only around $5,000, which I think is ridiculous. And I think there's something deeper. There's got to be some ties somewhere where he owed people money type of deal, because why are you risking it all for this? Unless you're a complete idiot, which Clase in the past has proven that he is not the sharpest tool in the shed. He was popped for PEDs when he was on the Rangers in the minor leagues, and now this, it is not looking good for him and Luis Ortiz. But yeah, he would spike a lot of these pitches, and people have put out videos on social media that, like, hey, this was like a trend. He comes into these games, and the first pitch he throws, a lot of them aren't even close. And it's really sad to see. But I think there is one funny clip, which I'll show you guys right now. But Clase was pitching to Andy Pages, and this was actually revealed in the leaked text that the bettors were texting him all mad because Clase spiked a first pitch to Andy Pages, and he ended up swinging at it for a strike. So they obviously lost a lot of money on that because Clase obviously told him, hey, I'm going to spike this one in the dirt. It's going to be a ball. And Pages actually swung. So let's take a look at that.
For the Dodgers. And a swing and a miss. Started him off with a...
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty funny stuff seeing Andy Pages, who just won a World Series with the Dodgers, to kind of break up Clase's scheme like that. But in turn, MLB has already implemented a $200 betting max on pitching props to kind of hope to deter this type of behavior. And I think it's a good move from Manfred and the MLB because this stuff is becoming more and more common in sports. I already mentioned the whole NBA situation, but I did a project in school on this exact thing, the rise of gambling in sports, and how if you're watching on like an NFL Sunday, for example, you can't go a single commercial break without seeing 2 or 3 of these sports betting ads. It's everywhere. And this is what happens when you promote it so much. And hey, I'll dabble here and there myself. I'm not going to lie. I will dabble. But when you throw this in everyone's face, every single commercial break, this is what you're going to get. This is what you're going to get. And the temptation is there for these players. And Clase in his head is probably thinking, well, I'm still going in and getting the save. The first pitch I throw is going to be a ball and we'll make some money. And that's what these players think. There has to be some type of regulation because things are out of control. And that's really all I have to say about that. Things are out of control, and something needs to be done about the just explosion of sports betting. And you see how lucrative it is, but it's ruining careers. It is ruining careers in the NBA, in the MLB, in the NFL too. Guys are getting caught gambling. I mean, I don't know, Jameson Williams got caught gambling last year, and it's only a matter of time before we see something like this happen in the NFL. But speaking of the NFL, we'll go ahead and move into football after this quick break. We got a lot to talk about NFL-wise and college football-wise. I think A&M does have a chance, or at least a case, to be number one. And Lane Kiffin actually backed up the Aggies. So we'll show you all that on the other side of this break. Welcome back to KCEN Kickoff here on 6 Plus. I'm your host, Ethan Love. And let's go ahead and get right into college football. Texas A&M having an amazing year. And there was this video by Lane Kiffin in his press conference where he was kind of defending A&M, like, well, why shouldn't they be number one? And I really agree with him. He is basically saying, like, why do you schedule these hard non-conference games like A&M did at Notre Dame if it really isn't going to give them some status in the CFP rankings, because they're number 3, and Lane is saying that they have a case for number 1. So let's go ahead and just see his words himself and what he thinks about A&M being at number 3.
I asked you last week, so I'm just a little curious now that the first CFP rankings are out, where you guys were, where the league was. Were you encouraged by that?
I think in some ways a little bit, but I think that some other people have pointed out, in other ways, no, like, Texas A&M being 3, well, what more do you want them to do to be 1? Like I said, when people want to schedule and they say, okay, man, we need you to schedule hard teams. You're going to have now 9 SEC and then play another hard one. Well, they went up to Notre Dame and won. So those people that say, man, those schedules are worth it to play that. What if they didn't play Notre Dame? If they just played whoever and just had an easy win, they'd be ranked in the same spot. So what good did that do if that's not rewarded? So they got the highest metrics of everybody, and they're not number 1. So I don't know. Again, you talk about those 2 teams right there. Put them on a neutral site. Ask Vegas who would win. What's the spread? And that to me shows more than people sitting around a room just guessing.
Yeah, I really agree with Coach Kiffin there. It's just, it makes sense, but I also said last week that if you win the national championship, you should be number 1 until you give the committee a reason to not keep you at number 1, and Ohio State really hasn't done that. But I definitely see the argument for A&M being number 2 over Indiana there. But I think 3, especially with their schedule and that Notre Dame game at the beginning of the year, and it's like it's an SEC team. They're going to have a hard schedule. So I definitely see where Coach Kiffin is coming from on that end. A&M has South Carolina this weekend. They have 3 games left in the season. They have South Carolina, Samford, and then Texas at the very end. And speaking of Texas, they play Georgia this week. And this game basically decides Texas's season as far as college football playoff hopes go. They are currently in it right now as we take a look at the entire CFP bracket here. South Florida coming in at number 12. So it's the top 5 conference champions that make it here. And South Florida would be playing at Georgia. Notre Dame would be playing in Oregon. Miami would go to Lubbock to play Texas Tech after their big win over the weekend, BYU. And Texas would be going to Ole Miss, a little SEC matchup there. And then the byes would be Alabama, Ohio State, Texas A&M, and Indiana. So that is also, it's looking like a good college. I think they got it right here. Wouldn't it be so fun to see South Florida upset Georgia? That would be awesome. Sorry, Kevin, our resident Georgia fan. But Texas is currently in the CFP, and if they beat Georgia this game, they're going to move up even more. Then at that point, it's kind of smooth sailing for them until the A&M game, and then that could really decide a lot. I said it last week, and I really hope it happens, that we see a 2-loss Texas play an undefeated A&M or a 1-loss A&M, but I don't think A&M is probably going to lose another game before they play Texas. But hey, I could be wrong. It's the SEC any given week. But that might be the biggest game. It will be the biggest game of the year. I don't even know what I'm saying. That will be the biggest game of the year. Kind of like the vibe we felt week 1, Texas, Ohio State, but on a much bigger level because these schools despise each other. They despise each other. And I'm here for all that madness. And if Texas ends up winning that game, okay, things could get really crazy because assume A&M is still undefeated. Maybe Ohio State or Indiana loses. And let's just say Texas A&M goes to number 1. And then if Texas loses to Georgia and then they win out and they beat Texas A&M, does a 3-loss Texas have a case to be in the college football playoff if they upset number 1 Texas A&M in the final week? That's where the madness really comes in because people will riot. People will riot if a 3-loss team makes the college football playoff. And the thing is, Texas is such a big brand. I feel like the committee would really try their hardest to do so, to justify it. Well, they just beat number 1 and they've had good wins, even though they have 3 losses. I don't know. I feel like things could get real messy if that last game ends up being a Texas upset over Texas A&M. So I got my popcorn ready. I got my college football hat on. TCU is cooked. As you guys know, I'm a Frog fan. I went to TCU and yeah, no, we're cooked. So, hey, I'm gonna root for all the madness I can, but I do really like Texas Tech. I'm interested to see how far they go. Jacob Rodriguez deserves Heisman consideration. Everyone's been saying it this week. He had a big game. He has been totally awesome for the Red Raiders. Great story, too, by the way. But let's go ahead and transition into the NFL world. The big news of the week, Brian Daboll has been fired as the head coach of the New York Football Giants. I think the writing was on the wall here. The writing was definitely on the wall. When you lose 4 games this season, when you lead by 10 points in the fourth quarter, that's a coaching issue. That is a coaching issue. And I don't think Daboll had necessarily a bad tenure with the Giants. I mean, he won a Coach of the Year. He had that good season with Daniel Jones. But when you do that and you're losing a lot, things aren't going to go well. I think it had to happen. But I will say this. The Giants' job will be the number 1 job this offseason. And I don't think it's even going to be remotely close. You're talking about the biggest market for football. Like, this is the New York Football Giants. This is a coveted job. This is a high-profile NFL coaching job. Jackson Dart has proven, I think, enough already that he is a franchise guy. He has already proven that he can throw on time with accuracy, make plays, and he can run too, but he is a little reckless. He left last game with a concussion, and he's going to need to clean that up because he does not know when to go down. But it's also kind of that dog mentality that he has too, so you can't really fault him too much for wanting to pick up that extra couple yards each play. But Cam Scatterboo, Malik Neighbors, the Giants have some exciting young weapons on offense. They really do. And on defense, too, they've had these high picks. They have Kayvon Thibodeau, Abdul Carter. Don't even mention Brian Burns. They have pieces on defense. This is a team that could really be one of those worst to first type of teams going into next year. And they're going to have another high pick this year. They're going to have another high pick. I'm not sure if they're going to have another high pick this year. So the Giants' job will be very coveted, to say the least. And I got 3 head coaching candidates that I think will be good for them. Starting out at number 1, John Gruden. This would be the culture-setting hire. The legacy coach. He's won a Super Bowl. He wants to get back into coaching. We saw how things happen with the Raiders, but let's be honest. Who's having success with the Raiders? Nobody. Nobody is having success with the Raiders as of late. John Gruden would come in. I just think back to the episode of his quarterback show that he did with Jackson Dart and the chemistry that they had and the whole clap sequence. That was really funny. But John Gruden would be kind of that safer hire, more stability type of hire. But I think that they want to maybe go for the home run And I would think that they would want to go for the home run, and I think the home run is Clint Kubiak. Another Shanahan tree guy. Dad was a coach as well, and he is killing it in Seattle. As much as it pains me to say as a 49ers fan that he is killing it in Seattle with Sam Darnold, and they have a great passing attack, and he has no head coaching experience, but these guys typically have a good track record. If you hire the young, innovative OC, it typically works out. And my third hire, if they want to go the defensive route, I will preface by saying this. I don't think you should ever go the defensive route with a head coach. The coaches that win Super Bowls are the offensive-minded guys, besides Belichick. And that was probably because he had Tom Brady. We see it more and more each year that Belichick really looks like a Brady merchant. And, you know, it pains to say that still a great coach, everything, did great defenses, but Tom Brady was why the Patriots won those Super Bowls. Anyways, if they do want to go the defensive route, I think Antonio Pierce, former Giant, would be a great choice. And this is the same type of deal with John Gruden. Antonio Pierce would go in and set the culture. I loved what he did with the Raiders. And again, same thing. A lot of Raiders guys have not had success. He had Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew as his quarterbacks. You're telling me that Antonio Pierce couldn't get this defense into shape and set the culture there? I mean, come on. I think that would be a great hire for the Giants. But sticking with the head coaching stuff, who will be the next to go? I think it's pretty obvious. Kevin Stefanski. And when you look at him and Daboll, they have a ton of similarities. They really do. They've both been at their spot for a while. They won a Coach of the Year. The whole thing with the Browns and Baker Mayfield went down. They should have never done that. Year over year, that trade gets worse, or the fact that they moved on from him for Deshaun Watson. But they're wasting another great Browns defense because they can't get the quarterback right. Deshaun Watson, is he coming back? We don't know. We don't know anything that's happening, but Dylan Gabriel is not it. And they just refuse to play Shadur. I don't know what it is, but they refuse to play Shadur Sanders. And so, yeah, I think it's only a matter of time before Kevin Stefanski is let go. I think he's kind of a lame duck right now, just waiting to be fired as the Browns continue to lose week after week. But kind of zooming out now into the broader picture, I just want to say that there's really no Super Bowl frontrunner right now. The league, I think this might be the closest it's been in a while. You don't have that team that is just dominating week in and week out. I mean, the Falcons, which we know they can be one of the most coin flip teams, I think, in the NFL, and everyone sees that week after week, but they just took the Colts to overtime. The Dolphins just beat the Bills. The NFC is a mess. And as much as I hate to say it as a 49ers fan, again, the Rams and Seahawks look like that would be the NFC Championship right now. The Lions, too. You can't forget about the Lions. They're just the model stability, and they have the most weapons in the NFL, the best offensive weapons in the NFL. But Matthew Stafford is playing on an unbelievable level right now, and so is Sam Darnold. JSN is going crazy. They just got Rashid Shaheed over the top. I mean, that Seattle offense is a problem. And who is guarding Devontae and Puka? Like, the Rams and Seahawks look really good. The Lions look really good. Those are probably my three from the NFC. The NFC East doesn't really wow me at this point. The Eagles look really consistent. And they played the Packers on Monday night, and they look like a mess too. It's one of those things where it's like they could win on any given week, but if there was a dark horse, it would be the Chicago Bears. Caleb Williams can make any throw at any point. So I'm never going to doubt him and Ben Johnson for the work that they've done to kind of turn this Bears season around. And I know a lot of their games are close, but the fact that they're winning them says a lot about the coaching. So the Bears are definitely a dark horse in the NFC, but looking at the AFC, it's just the Chiefs feel inevitable. They're kind of just hanging around right now, but you just have a feeling in your stomach and the back of your head that they're going to flip a switch and turn it on and start winning a ton of games, and then there'll be a wild card, and they're going to go in and just turn it on, and Mahomes is going to enter his playoff mode, which frankly disgusts me. But it just seems like the Chiefs are inevitable. The Bills are a mess on offense. They don't have weapons. Khalil Shakir is their wide receiver one, and that's no dig on Khalil Shakir, but they don't have a ton of weapons besides their tight ends and James Cook, obviously, but the Bills have been wildly inconsistent. Do we trust Daniel Jones? It seems like it's just the Jonathan Taylor show, and the Colts are going to ride Jonathan Taylor and see how far he can take them, which is probably very far. He definitely needs some MVP consideration, but I don't know. There is just a ton going on in the NFL right now, and it's hard to predict. This is one of the hardest years that I've had to try and predict how things are going to go week in and week out. I mean, you saw our KCEN Survivor Series. It lasted like 5 weeks because all these upsets happened. The Browns knocked me out of Survivor when they beat the Packers because, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Oh, it's just ridiculous. But let's look at our fantasy update again as we head down the stretch. Madison's 9-1. Brandon is 8-2. Our assistant news director, Matt, is also 8-2. That rounds out the top 3. And then the rest of the playoffs is Bailey, Sarah, Matt Farrell, myself, and Brendan, our producer. So definitely heading down the stretch here. Jacob did beat me. We talked about our fantasy matchup last week, and he did beat me. My team was very injured, so hopefully bouncing back this week. I play Brandon, and I have been saying this in our newsroom a lot, that Brandon is fraudulent fantasy-wise. His entire team is Jonathan Taylor. And thankfully for me, Jonathan Taylor is on bye this week, so I should have a good chance against Brandon this week. Rashee Rice is back, but before we end the show, some big news happened last week on Thursday with the passing of Marshawn Kneeland, and it kind of hits close to home with the Cowboys and everything like that, but I just want to kind of end the show by sending condolences to his family and the Cowboys, and just say that mental health is really important. And this is just a terrible loss for the NFL community. It's a promising second-year player that had scored his first NFL touchdown on a blocked punt just days before we all watched it on Monday Night Football. And it's just incredibly sad. So just condolences again to the Cowboys and his family. And the Cowboys have a lot planned this weekend to honor him. So I'm very excited to see what they do and how they play for him the rest of the season, because that's got to shake up that entire locker room and organization. And it's just incredibly sad. But I think that's going to do it all for here on KCEN Kickoff this week. This is our 10th episode, so thank you guys for tuning in and watching week in and week out. We're going to continue to have kind of longer shows and more in-depth talk because our game of the week is over, so therefore I'm going to be putting a lot more effort into KCEN Kickoff and making it the best that it can possibly be. But this weekend, we have Friday Night Lights. We don't have our full game of the week and everything like that because playoffs are now starting. But we're going to be out at a lot of playoff games for our schools here around the Central Texas area. And we will wish them all the best of luck, and we'll have all that covered for you on Friday. And then we have football, Baylor and A&M on Saturday. And then Sunday Night Football is going to be a great game. Eagles and Lions. Our boss, Jim, big Lions fan, he's excited for that one. So let's hope the Lions win so he's in a great mood next week. But that's going to do it all for KCEN Kickoff. We will see you next week.